Hi, Sagittarius. So, this is your 2022 wrap up. We're looking at the themes and lessons of last year so that hopefully going forward in 2023, you'll be able to use that information to help you out. I shuffled your deck and I pulled your cards, and your energy for the year of 2022 was the moon in the reverse. The reason why death in the reverse. So, some harsh truths this year, right? Really seeing things for what they are. And that's because there was a lot of stagnant energy in your life. It was time to release some things here. I'm seeing some sadness over a relationship that did not work out. And it feels like you were having trouble moving on from that with the chariot in the reverse. It feels like perhaps you weren't allowing the situation to go because of the expectation that you had at one point, of what could have been, right? And so I feel like that's kind of a repeating theme throughout the reading that I'm seeing, where there was a lot of energy put towards trying to maintain what could have been, rather than creating something new. And so I feel like this may have been a difficult year for you guys, although it was necessary, because you can't live in the chariot reverse, death and reverse energy for too long, right? It ends up you spending so much time trying to breathe life into things that are gone, that you're stagnant, you're not moving forward, you're not creating anything new for yourself. And so this could have been a hard year for you, because with the moon in the reverse, it allowed you to see situations for what they truly were. In what areas of your life or your psyche were you perpetuating cycles that needed to come to a close? Perhaps what were you waiting around for? It looks like forgiveness or some kind of reconciliation that did not come forward for you, right? Or did not come through for you this year. But I feel like that's because the universe was trying to get you into a space where you were ready to create something new. So if you're the kind of person who usually is in relationships, and then this year it feels like there really wasn't anything going on for 2022, that's because the universe was trying to give you time to heal and let go of some of these old things that it looks like you were holding on to, so that you can make space for that new person to come into your life, right? Six of Swords coming out for how this energy affected your love life. And I feel like you did probably move on from some of this stagnant energy that I'm seeing with this Queen of Pentacles reverse, Page of Cups in reverse. It's almost like there was some kind of like family structure that perhaps did not work out. Some of you could have experienced a divorce a few years ago, or some kind of separation of a family unit that you were banking on having for the rest of your lives, is what this looks like. And so you've kind of been in this space of perhaps not allowing the ending to really just be in your mind, right? I feel like 2022, this was a year of you having to realize that you were staying in a place that no longer existed, right? And so there is an energy of you having to figure out, what does the future look like? For some of you, this is like a ex-husband or wife that you were with, and so you could have children in common with that person, and you have to reassess, like, okay, now that this is not something that I'll be able to go back to, or they're not going to come back to this, what does this look like moving forward for the children, right? For some of you, therapy would have really benefited you in 2022. Perhaps you started therapy and that helped you to kind of separate yourself from some of these things that I feel like you were viewing them as failures. And so perhaps that's why you kept trying to like reignite situations, because you didn't want to feel like you were failing. But what I'll say about that is, like, sometimes things just are not meant to be, right? And so the universe comes in and things change. And that doesn't mean that you failed in any aspect of the situation. It could just be that people are seasons, right? And so sometimes someone is great in the spring, but they might not be who you need in the winter, right? And I feel like that was kind of a difficult truth that you had to realize in 2022. It looks like perhaps if there were people that you were waiting on, or a particular person you were waiting on, there's a possibility that they could have moved, right? Like completely relocated. And so that kind of solidified that feeling of like, this isn't going to happen. It feels like people were moving further away from you if you were trying to wait for them, right? And so there's an energy of feeling as though you have nothing to do but kind of sit in it and figure it out. And that really was the purpose, right? If you feel like things are actually moving in a direction opposite of what you had been hoping, it's because the universe was trying to give you time to yourself. So there was nobody new coming in. Old people were doing other things. You were supposed to be just taking that time to heal and kind of figure out what you want for yourself, what parts of you need attention, right? And what your beliefs are around the situations that it feels like you were holding on to. Like if you're viewing them as a failure and you have to go back and try again, perhaps shifting that belief as like, you know what, this is just something that I outgrew and it was what it was, and there is no need to relearn this lesson, right? So kind of difficult energy for your love life. As far as your Ace of Cups, that is in reference to your money. So it feels like your finances were very good. There's a possibility that whatever you started, because it looks like you could be doing something new or you could be working in a new location, that might be where you meet your next partner. For those of you who did not switch jobs, it could very well be that you've been blessed with a better financial situation. And so that's going to allow you to explore some other avenues of your life that I feel like you haven't been able to, because so much of your energy has been wrapped up in this moon of trying to like figure things out that actually don't really need figuring out anymore, right? So money's getting better, or it has gotten better, and that was so that you could start reconnecting to yourself in other areas, so that you would have the funds to do more or explore different situations that perhaps you would not usually find yourself in. And it was supposed to be something that elevated you into a space where your heart could start healing, right? So maybe if you had more money, you were able to like take that class that you never really knew you were interested in or always kind of thought about but never had time. And through that, you were able to discover something about yourself that you didn't know, right? Or you were able to meet people that had a vibe that was very healing to you. So finances were good, and the point of them being better was so that you could start healing, right? And I don't know if that's because you needed the platform of like stability to kind of be able to springboard off of and do something new, or if it was more because you just needed to start creating something on your own that would give you the gumption and kind of that feeling of like, wow, you know what, maybe this over here isn't working, but like, look what I've been able to produce, right? There was something about your financial life that was supposed to give you a renewal as far as how you felt about yourself, even if it was just more money to give yourself better self-care. So if you did that at all this year, I'm happy for you, because it looks like that's so necessary with some of these deeper, darker energies that you were dealing with. As far as your relationship with yourself, you got the Hanged Man, Page of Swords in the reverse for the why. So this is interesting to me because I feel like you did a good thing this year by not resisting the feelings that you were feeling, not resisting what you were seeing. And in the past few years, I feel like perhaps you would have had more of a knee-jerk reaction to whatever this was that was transpiring, whether it was old partners doing different things, or people moving, or work shifting, right? Perhaps in the past you had a difficulty with change if you were not the one inciting the change, right? But this year, I feel like you really started to trust the process rather than rushing in to fix things or to be like that person that takes control. You kind of sat back, you know, and you allowed people to show you. Are they going to meet you halfway? Are you working so hard to try to reestablish or maintain connections that if you don't show up, nobody else does, right? are people calling you if you don't reach out first? And so I feel like what was really nice is that you put yourself in a situation mentally and emotionally where you didn't feel the need to maintain some of these connections that it feels like maybe you were the only one working on, right? If people needed you, then I'm sure they were there, right? And so maybe that's why it feels like this has gone on for so long, is because when people are in dire straits, they call Sagittarius. But when they're fine, right, or they have something better to do, they're nowhere to be found. And so I feel like, as far as you go, you resisted the urge to fill in the gaps in regards to connections, right? You resisted the urge to be that person that was always trying to show up for everybody else, and you decided to just watch, just collect information, not really speak on what you saw, not really call people out, but just really pay attention. What happens if I tell this ex no, right, that I can't do this today? How do they behave? Do they discount all the years that I've been showing up for them because of this one situation? Something like that, for example, right? So I like this because you didn't put a lot of pressure on yourself this year to be anything in particular, whereas in the past, I feel like you guys held yourselves to a standard that was almost unattainable for a regular person, right? That you're not supposed to show your pain. You're not supposed to ever have any feelings about the way people are treating you or disappointing you. You're just supposed to be that person that no matter what is always there for everybody else, right? So I like this because it's almost like you got into a space within yourself where you're like, you know what? I'm going to play my role, but I'm going to allow my role to be dictated by however other people act, rather than me assuming a role of like, I am this, I am the hero, I am the provider, I am the caregiver, I am the counselor. You're like, I'm going to take a step back, right? And you show me how this is going to go based on your actions. So this is really good for you guys, because rather than resisting this moon in the reverse of like, no, I don't want to see this for what this is, I want to stay with what I know, it really was the energy of like, you know what, I'm going to try something different this year. Rather than holding on to everything so tightly, I'm just going to open my arms, and what's here at the end of the year is for me, and what's not is not. So very good, right? I feel like even though you had doubts about whether or not you could actually do that, you did a great job of not rushing in to kind of like set the tone or the narrative. And in doing that, you are really able to see who is for you and who is not for you. So I think that'll be a huge tool moving into 2023 as you're kind of creating some new things for yourselves, right? Three of Cups in the reverse for your mental. Why Two of Cups in the reverse? So I feel like mentally you guys have been kind of disappointed around your actions. And this is pertaining to a relationship. Perhaps as you started to see things more clearly, you realized that there were things that you were showing up for that you shouldn't have been. There's things that you didn't show up for that you could have been had you not been so enmeshed in whatever this energy was. And so there's kind of this disappointment around the way that certain situations have gone and the role that you played. What I do like about this, though, is that I feel like you're still pretty optimistic, even though there were times you were down. With the Three of Cups in the reverse, for some of you, you've dealt with depression with the moon. Perhaps you're struggling with like a chemical dependency, or you overindulge with alcohol when you get in this mood, right? But I do feel like overall, you guys are still optimistic. I think that you started feeling like you needed to cut people out, right? As you moved through this Hanging Man Page of Swords in the reverse energy, and some of your suspicions were being confirmed, it was almost like, okay, as much as this hurts, I gotta let some of this stuff go. And so, being that you released things this year, you felt grief, right? And that's totally normal, because situations and relationships can be horribly toxic and you still grieve them when they're gone, right? That's a normal human behavior, whether you understand it or not. That's just how your heart works, right? There are also situations with the Three of Cups in the reverse, Two of Cups in the reverse, where it's like, hey, this is disappointing to me. Like, I was not my best self. And so, what I'll caution you about is like, maybe don't run yourself over the coals, right? Because some of the cards I'm seeing here can talk about you becoming critical of your actions back when you were in the moon energy. And what I'll say about that is like, hindsight is always 2020, right? Like, of course we know what to do after everything's said and done, but when you're in the thick of situations, it's very difficult to always know the exact thing that needs to happen. So perhaps in the next year, try to be very kind to yourselves, right? Because, like, for example, if you stayed in a relationship that was just so abusive and then you get out of it, don't look back and think like, how could I have done that to myself? How could I have been so stupid? How could I have been so blind? Instead, look at it like, wow, I was a victim of someone else's, atrocious behavior, right? Try not to blame yourself, because that's kind of what I'm seeing here is like some victim blaming. And unfortunately, you're the person who was victimized. And instead of you being there for yourself, it's kind of like you're still salty with yourself about the actions that you took. And I don't think that that's fair to you guys, okay? So this is your 2022 wrap up. I feel like this was kind of a hard year, but on the bright side, I do feel like you're positioned to have a really good year in 2023. I will be doing your 2023 forecast very soon. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure that you have subscribed to the channel and you've tapped the bell to be notified when it comes out. I'll speak to all of you again soon. Bye.